gentleman called Rob Grimshaw, who is the Chief Executive of TES Global. This topic kind of moves us on very neatly from what you've just heard, in that it starts to look at the actual kind of position of teachers and who looks after the teachers, both kind of domestically here, but also internationally, both in the US and further afield in Asia and Australia. So I'd like to welcome Rob Grimshaw, who will give you a very interesting speech about the role of teachers and how to look after them. Thanks very much. Rob. Pleasure.
So good morning, everybody. How are you all? Thank you for coming along. I'm Rob Grimshaw. I'm the CEO of TES. We do lovely things for teachers in schools. Charles was entirely right in his intro. It's important to focus on the teachers, not least because actually schools typically spend 80% of their budgets on teachers. A big secondary school would be 80%. A primary school might spend 90% of their budget on teachers. So if you look at the overall education budget, what is it, 45, 50 billion pounds for schools in England, the vast majority of that is going into the teaching staff. At TES, we believe that the whole school system should be trying to get the best out of that incredible resource. And in fact, it's something that is essentially part of our mission. We are here to some extent to liberate teachers. If you talk to teachers or school leaders, you hear the same thing over and over again, which is that they got into education because they want to inspire kids, they want to be in the classroom, making a difference. But when they get into the segment, what they find is that there's lots and lots of things that get in the way of that. Bureaucracy, assessment, homework setting, administration, you name it. And ultimately, they can't spend as much time as they would like doing the thing they love. Well, what we want to try and do as an organization is to help them a little bit with that and give them the space to teach, to do what they love, to inspire the next generation with great ideas and make a contribution to all of our futures. Well, how do we do that? Well, firstly, we are very well positioned to make a difference. We have 8.3 million teachers around the world who actually use TES. This is an enormous community around the globe. It's expanding very rapidly. We have typically over 30,000 sign-ups every week. And there's enormous activity on the site. During a typical term time day, we would have over 1 million downloads from our resources library. In fact, the resources overall has now had over 1 billion downloads from it, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. And we're the #1 place where schools come to find the teaching talent they need for their institutions. How do we do it? Well, we have kind of two pieces to the business. One is focused on what we would refer to as professional collaboration, things which bring teachers together online in order to share their expertise and through that process become better and more effective professionals. So that's things like the lesson planning library. Everything that's in there is uploaded by individual teachers, sharing their expertise with peers, but also through news, through community. We have teacher training, professional development. All these things draw enormous numbers of teachers into us on a daily basis, and they come from all over the world. 180 plus countries I think we have registrations in, and we get to know these people pretty well because of all the activity that goes on the site. We have enormous amounts of insight into teachers and what motivates them and also what concerns them day to day in their professional lives. And because of all that insight, because of all that activity, that means we are absolutely a great place for schools to come and find the teachers that they need for their classrooms. And we offer a wide range of recruitment services, right through, well, straightforward advertising, but right through to sophisticated search using our talent bank and other recruitment tools to find exactly the right teacher for exactly the right classroom. And what does it look like? Well, as you'd expect from a digital business. It's a networked and social experience on TES. We make a great effort to try and personalize and tailor what we're doing for all the individual teachers in our audience, and that means we set up the site to pull all the relevant bits and pieces from the various bits of the proposition into a single feed, so that as teachers come onto the site day by day, and they engage with us a lot, 80% of teachers in the UK come to TES at least once a week for something. As they come onto the site, they can easily find everything that they need. Now, let's talk a bit more about what we're doing to actually help teachers in their professional lives, what we're doing to kind of liberate them from the many challenges that they have in educating the kids in our country and around the world. We thought a few years ago about whether there were some things that we could do as an organization that would really make a difference to their professional lives. And when we looked around, the big thing that stood out as something that we could help with was lesson planning. Part of the reason is because this is such a big deal for teachers in their professional lives. Teachers are delivering 4 or 5 lessons a day, 5 days a week, 40 weeks a year. Teachers in the UK will deliver 500 million lessons this year. Teachers in the US will deliver 4 billion lessons this year. This is enormous overhead on the whole profession. And if you can make it a little bit easier, then it makes a big difference to the education system as a whole. So we did something, what it's turned into is a gigantic global teacher-to-teacher marketplace for free and paid classroom resources. And it's at huge scale. We have over 50,000 authors who have contributed materials to the lesson planning library since it was set up 7-8 years ago. They have uploaded hundreds of thousands of resources, and they have been downloaded actually over 1 billion times now by teachers all over the world at a furious rate, 1 million downloads a day. And they've gone to teachers in over 160 countries around the world. We've touched almost every part of the world. And if you think about the number of lessons that these resources have now been used in, and our research shows that over 2/3 of the materials that are downloaded actually do get used. Now, this has had an enormous impact on the education system, not just in the UK, but all over the world. And fundamentally, it's been done by just connecting teachers with each other. It's something that we are tremendously proud of. We're particularly proud of the fact that we've had such a scale of downloads. 1 billion is an enormous number. And in fact, when we hit that mark in May, we decided that we needed to just do something to mark it. So we put together a little video just asking kids how big they thought 1 billion was. And here it is.
What is the biggest number you know?
1,688.
Infinity and 100.
A squillion.
1,000.
600 and 600 and 600 and then 8,000.
If you had to count from 1 to 1 billion, how long do you think it would take?
Over an hour. 3 whole days and 3 whole nights.
About 12 minutes.
2 weeks.
Half an hour.
10 weeks.
I'll lose count day to a year.
If you could have 1 billion of anything, what would you choose?
I'll have 1 billion adventures.
Hot dogs.
Giraffes.
Skyscrapers.
Dogs. Chocolate.
1 billion muscles.
It's cute, isn't it? And there's a serious point to it because this is all about the kids at the end of the day. It's about getting teachers to share their professional expertise with each other so that actually every single class around the world can have the best possible education, the most inspiring, the most stimulating lessons. And all of this is being powered ultimately by teachers. And okay, we've talked about the numbers, but what about the individuals behind it. What motivates individual teachers to do this? Well, this story is a lovely one. This is a teacher called Ray Rogers. He's an ordinary teacher, primary school teacher in East London. And when Ray entered the profession some years ago, one of the biggest challenges that he encountered in his classroom was dealing with dyslexic kids. And it frustrated him enormously because in his first couple of years in the classroom, he felt like he wasn't getting through to these kids, and they were suffering as a result. Their education wasn't progressing. Now, Ray isn't an individual who shirks a challenge. He actually went back to improve his own education and studied the subject. And then from the knowledge he gained, he developed a whole set of materials which were designed specifically to help dyslexic kids in the classroom, and they worked. They were very effective. He saw immediate results. So he shared them. He shared them with the rest of the profession on TES, and it's had an enormous impact. So this one teacher, Ray Rogers, has had 2.8 million downloads of his teaching materials in 166 individual countries. He's now got almost 2,000 resources uploaded to that. And what a difference that's potentially making to the education of dyslexic kids all over the world. The TES Resources Library is essentially made up of hundreds and hundreds of those individual stories, individual teachers that want to help their profession all over the world. And I just find it constantly inspiring. Now, one of the things that we've been doing over the past couple of years is just finding a way that some of these authors can actually get a little bit more out of the experience. And we've introduced a commercial element to the library, which means that it now looks a little like the App Store. Right? So you've got free resources and paid resources alongside each other, and it's up to the individual authors, like Ray, whether they put a price on their resource or whether they share them for free. And there's a huge mix of both, hundreds of thousands of paid, hundreds of thousands of free resources. And we weren't sure, how this would go, whether teachers actually would embrace a paid element to the proposition, but it's been enormously successful. And in fact, we've seen, encouragingly, an enormous amount of repeat buying behavior. I'll just try and explain what you've got here. This line represents an individual cohort of buyers in the marketplace who first purchased in July 2015. And what the line shows is the percentage of that cohort who came back to purchase again in each month subsequently. So we can see in March 2017, 25% of that July 15 cohort came back to purchase. So you'd say they're probably enjoying this experience. They find it to be good. What's even more encouraging is that if you look at every single cohort since, they show exactly the same behavior. So once teachers buy in the marketplace, they find they're getting great resources, that they're good value, they're helping them in their professional lives, and they come back and do more. And through that, the individual authors, people like Ray, who put huge effort into creating materials and sharing them, are getting an extra reward back for what they're doing, which I think is fantastic. And it helps to make the whole thing sustainable, because we, as an organization, can now invest more in the platform on the back of the commission that we're taking from each transaction. Now, we also try and spend some of our time making life more straightforward for school leaders who face their own hurdles and challenges in their professional lives. One of the big things that dominates the lives of head teachers is finding talent for their schools. And as I mentioned earlier, if you're spending 80% of your budget on teachers, then finding the right teachers fills up a lot of headspace. And actually, historically, recruitment of teachers is not something that was as straightforward as it should have been. And we know that because actually TES has been involved in recruiting teachers on behalf of schools for the best part of 100 years. And what we've been trying to do in the past couple of years is to figure out how we can make this whole process much better, much more straightforward, remove some of the friction, remove some of the problems so that school leaders don't have to spend as much time engaged in this activity, which frankly none of them really love. So we've changed our pricing model. We've moved from transactional advertising to subscriptions. So schools pay one price and it's an all-you-can-eat package after that. We've created a talent bank proposition, which means that we can search for the exact teacher the school needs, or exact profile of teacher. We've introduced a whole set of online workflow tools to support the whole recruitment process. We've invested in developing a supply teaching business so that we can help schools with temporary placements as well. And it's all starting to come together quite nicely. Now, this little video here will just show some more of the details, and in particular, the online tools that help support the whole process. Now, when a school is actually buying an advertising package from us now, out of the box, they're getting campaign tracking tools, online application forms, an application management tool so they can shortlist and manage interviews. We are in the process of adding in referencing tools, video interviewing tools, and our aim essentially is to produce something which supports the entire hiring process end to end. And we feel very strongly that in a digital world, we need to have more skin in the game. It's not enough for us just to, as an organization, show up just for the advertising bit of the piece. Actually, we should be supporting the whole process end to end. Now, we call all of this the package of tools the school portal, and we put it live in September last year. At this point, we have over 6,000 schools that are using the school portal, and that's out of 20,000 schools in the country. So in the space of a year, we've had more than a quarter of schools in the country adopting the tools, which tells us that this is going down pretty well with the school leader community. And we think there's an awful lot more that we can do on this. So as an organization, we'll continue to focus relentlessly on all the things which are wrong with the recruitment process, and figure out how we can put them right, and develop more tools that support that process and make it straightforward and easy for schools. There's a lot to go at here, which is good for schools, also good for us as a business. Schools each year spend about £200 million on recruiting teachers. Actually, most of it doesn't go on advertising. Most of it goes to recruitment agencies. Schools are spending about £130 million on recruitment agencies every year, and getting a pretty poor deal, actually. Typically, when a school is going to a recruitment agency, they'll be spending £4,000 or £5,000 a time, and it's the channel of last resort. They arrive at a recruitment agency because nothing else worked. Now, we think that we can do it better and cheaper. I mentioned earlier that we're developing a talent bank. We want to put together the biggest, most comprehensive talent bank of teachers in the UK, and through that, help schools that are having trouble finding the teachers they need, and do it at a rate which is half or less than the rate that they typically would be charged by a recruitment agency. And with the application of a bit of smarts, a bit of technology, we're very confident that we can make that happen. And ultimately, if a school really can't find a teacher for a recruitment process, well, increasingly we can help them too, because we now have a teacher training business called TES Institute. This year we will train over 500 new teachers in the UK. We'll actually be the 7th biggest teacher training entity in the UK this year. And we've grown by more than 50% year on year. And it's growing rapidly because we've created a flexible, scalable model around this. This is a school-based teacher training course, which is a blended, built around a blended approach where a lot of the curriculum and materials are delivered to the teachers online, and the classroom practice is done in the school, and the whole process is overseen by a pathway tutor who interacts with the student both online and in person. And it produces fantastic teachers who have great classroom experience. Now, we got into this business because actually the world is going to need a lot of teachers in the next few years. A UNESCO report last year estimated that the world would need to bring on 69 million new teachers up to the year 2030. Now, right now in the world, there are 70 million teachers. So essentially, we need to recruit the entire base of teachers again. Now, of course, some of that is replacing churn, right? But a lot of this is new teachers. The teacher workforce globally needs to expand enormously. The traditional ways of training teachers are not going to be able to cope with this. And we see a great opportunity around this to actually help schools all over the world get the teachers they need in innovative ways. And we see that as being right in line with our mission to focus on providing the world with the teaching talent that it needs, and also making sure that we support teachers in their professional lives. So I hope you forgive a Carol Dweck related joke, as it's an education conference. Growth is our mindset, and that's TES, professional collaboration and talent for the teachers and schools of the world. Thank you very much.